The market just got volatile. It was up and down. And then once the momentum took off, I think we saw that from April. Another thing that I noticed was the speed of recovery. So we saw momentum, very large V-shaped recoveries.
And one of the biggest surprises was that it took silver so long to catch up to gold.
It's not AI, it's not gold, it's not that, it's satellites.
On this episode of Early Bird, what were the biggest investment themes of 2025, including the biggest surprises, as well as winning stocks and sectors for the year? Joining us today on the podcast to discuss these topics are Dan Passarelli, President at Market Taker Mentoring, Marcus Sturdivant, founder of the ABC Squared All Bases Covered, and Alex Carteau, CEO of EPSmomentum.com. If you're an investor looking to stay on top of the latest market trends, then you're listening to the right podcast. This is Early Bird, and I'm your host, Stephen Lerner. Before we get to today's discussion, let me tell you how you can save time and beat the market through Early Bird, a free daily email newsletter featuring commentary about the latest trends in stocks, cryptocurrency, and equity crowdfunding. Early Bird is designed to help individual and non-professional investors stay on top of all of the critical investing trends. The newsletter is 100% free and is sent to your email box each weekday morning. Subscribe to Early Bird for free at www.earlybird.email. Once again, that's earlybird.email. And now, today's discussion. All right, everybody, welcome to the Early Bird podcast. Today, we're looking back at the stock market in 2025, some of the biggest themes and winning stocks, and we've assembled a great round table here. The first question I'm going to ask, and I'll start with Marcus, since you've been on this program before. Marcus, I want you to tell us what you think are the biggest investment themes looking back this past year in 2025, but I also want you to, real brief, if you could look back at the year in the stock market, come up with one word to describe that year that we've just wrapped up in 2025, what would that word be, Marcus?
Tumultuous.
Tumultuous,
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So talk about that. What are the big themes you remember this past year in 2025?
I think 2025 will be remembered for momentum, retail traders, and the move back to international.
Okay, talk about that. Those are some interesting themes. Definitely agree with you on that. But why'd you pick those themes?
Right. So if we just think back to the beginning of last year, like you said earlier in the year, we recorded a podcast where my word was actually meticulous, as into how you have to be in picking stocks and investments. But once we saw the market detox, the economic global detox that we went through in the first quarter, into part of the second quarter, of some mixed messaging coming out, the market just got volatile. It was up and down. And then once the momentum took off, I think we saw that from April. Another thing that I noticed was the speed of recovery. So we saw momentum, very large V-shaped recoveries. And a lot of that was carried by retail investors. That's who was buying the dip. If you just go back and look at the data, it seems like the retail investors were carrying a lot of this year. Institutional investors have yet to catch up. So maybe they're the smart money. We'll see.
So retail investors, just the audience knows, we're talking about everyday normal investors. You're saying carry the stock market. And good point to bring up April. The market tanked essentially and has since recovered. And that was mainly because of the tariff announcement. So good points there. Alex, want to ask you about the big themes you saw in 2025. And before that, if you could just pick one word to describe the market in 2025, what would that word be?
I'll say more clarity. We started the year with wars, tariffs, rates, and we ending the year with potentially peace, hopefully, rates going down, growth this year, and really great growth over the year, over the 52 weeks. So yeah, I will say more clarity this year.
I don't feel like there hasn't been a lot of clarity, especially as we're ending the year. There's still so many questions in the market, but
it is, but it's clearing out.
It is.
Those things are clearing out.
So tying into that, what the big in themes this year was, besides clarity, what are some of the big themes you saw, Alex, in the market?
I mean, I'm going to play the obvious with AI, right? But the AI is a different. It's different this year. So last year was the NVIDIA story, right? NVIDIA doubled or whether it tripled, whatever. And so that was a chip first wave, and then it grew into the entire value chain of it. So once you have the chips, you need the servers, you need the storage. So this year we saw server, storage, Western Digital, Seagate. We saw optical networking component. That's CNI corporations and so on. And then you have to build those data centers, right? And power them. And then we saw electricity and infrastructure, energy infrastructure. So big topic. And then we can touch upon this, which is the big tectonic shift in finance. I'll say digital finance and regular finance like TradFi. So with stable coins, dollar, gold, all those and hard assets. So this is a big topic for me this year. Was I call it the debasement trade, right? Debasement of the dollar. And hard assets, gold, silver, and the last one for the end of the year is the rare earth story, right? Which is something that we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. With the dollar, rare earths, these are big topics that are still coming up as we enter 2026 as well. Good points. Good points, Alex. Last but not least, Dan, wanted to ask you about your big themes that you saw in 2025. But before that, tell me, if you could look back at the market, pick one word to describe it in 2025, what would that word be for you, Dan?
I would go with optimism.
Okay.
Unwavering market optimism.
Why do you feel that?
Well, one of the themes that we've seen for a couple of years now is, will they cut rates? Because fundamentally that's good for stocks, because fixed income and the stock market compete against each other. And so I watch the CME Fed funds futures. And if you watch how big of a rate cut is factored into the futures, which is, it's pushed around by supply and demand of big time hedgers, traders, investors. It's been over optimistic. I mean, really not just 2025, but 2024 as well. The market's just been so optimistic towards rate cuts. And even when those didn't become fulfilled, to the degree that was expected, apparently, by the market, backing that out from the CME Fed funds futures, the market still ended up going up anyway. So it was really pretty interesting, I guess, in that regard, as far as optimism goes. But, a lot of other stuff too, just no fear of the AI bubble. I go through and I read all my newsletters in the morning, my emails from Bloomberg and all that, and the word bubble's used every day, but nobody really seems to care. So
yeah, it's certainly talked about a lot in the market for sure. The market's still resilient. Any other big themes, Dan, that you want to bring up that you saw in 2025 in the market?
Oh, yeah. I guess there's a lot of stuff. The introduction of structured products that sell volatility has been a really, really interesting thing that I guess I kind of have a lot to say about. I'm sure it'll come up later in the show as well. But, that's been an interesting thing, because it's been able to be taken advantage of and, may have had some fundamental impact on the markets as well, because of mainly because of the options, as people sell options, and leads to what we call negative gamma, which basically means that big moves can become more profound because of the market makers or the dealers need to hedge their positions. So it can kind of add volatility in extreme times.
It can. That's a good point. So looking back at 2025, Stocks are not always that predictable. 2025 was no exception. So I want to ask, what surprised each of you about the stock market in 2025? Dan, I'll start with you. What surprised you the most about the stock market in 2025? Was it some of the stuff you were talking about, or was it something else that surprised you?
There's a lot of things, and I figured I'll just start out and throw a darn wrench into the whole thing. Here's one of the biggest surprises for me this year. So I paid close attention to metals, specifically gold. And one of the biggest surprises was that it took silver so long to catch up to gold. It was kind of strange how in the beginning, gold, it's just been climbing and climbing for fundamental reasons. Part of that, I think, Alex mentioned the debasement trade. I think it's tied into that somewhat. But silver just sat stagnant for so long. And you hear people saying, I think silver is going to take off soon. And lo and behold, oh my gosh, it did. And it just, it didn't stop. It made up for lost time and then some. So, there's one thing. I don't know if you call that the stock market or not, but it sure ties into the whole investment scheme as far as I see it.
No, it did. And especially as of late, silver has done really well. It's caught up. It's experiencing the types of gains we have seen in gold in the past year or so. So it is a big surprise as of late. Marcus, what surprised you about the market in 2025?
Right, so just jumping right in from where Dan went, as he's going into the gold and the silver. Platinum's performing pretty well, but that's all as Alex mentioned earlier, the debasement trade, people's flight from risk. Mm-hmm. You also see it with crypto, right? You saw crypto, which was kind of correlated earlier this year, seems to have separated from the stock market here lately. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where the dollars have been going when they've been going back into the stock market. So that's been a big thing this year. It's been a big year for crypto. Alex mentioned the stable coins. And then with the dollar's depreciation, the international trade just came back. Also, some of the detox helped with that as well. Because when the messaging wasn't quite clear from February to April, and the stock market was churning and moving, figuring out where we were going, a lot of dollars went internationally. And I missed that. I think a lot of people missed the international trade. You have the American exceptionalism trade running 23, 24. And we thought going in 25 that we were going to have, deregulation, all these things coming in with the Trump trade that was just going to open up the economy. And it just seemed to be a little bit more. The FTC was a little bit more restricted to start. And they've opened up a little bit more going into the latter half of the year. And one other thing I want to mention is what we're seeing with the Mag 7. So the Mag 7 is like 35-40% of the market, the S&P, depending on how you look at it. But the law of large numbers said that's going to come down, right? So in 23, the Mag 7 was up 76% at like 5.1 trillion market cap. 24, that was up 48% at 5.6%. This year is projected to be up like 19% and 3.2 trillion in market cap, right? So when I say the law of large numbers, that just means those numbers have to eventually come down. You can only have growth so far. But I think that's just shifting into other cyclical areas. Money's going out. So maybe it's a second derivatives, as they mentioned earlier, of the AI trade.
Yeah, we'll have to see where the money flows to. And you're right, when you looked at all those alternatives and even the Mag 7, a big surprise there. We'll see what happens in 2026 for sure, but it was certainly a surprise to see how some of those Mag 7 stocks moved in 2025. Alex, what are some of the big surprises from the stock market that you saw in 2025? I know we talked about a few different issues right now with silver, gold, and the stocks, but what surprised you?
So I'm going to go with Marcus. What Marcus said, the narrowing of the market, really. Really a few names, call it 7, 8, or 10 names that really drive everything, right? Lately, we've seen some sectors catching up, and those leaders being muffled a little bit. So that is positive, a broadening of the market. But overall, during the year, the entire market was very narrow. So that's one surprise. Gold, we spoke about it, was a major surprise. And yeah, everyone embracing crypto. I'm just doing a repeat here. But crypto, I think next year will be really the beginning of the age of tokenization, real world asset, and those structured product on our for the first, with the strategy products, the first popping up. Look at the first yield curve in Bitcoin, right? Created by strategy, Michael Satter, right? So this is major. So that was a quick kind of a surprise after a major crypto winter in 22 and 23 a little bit.
Yeah, well, we're in a 4-year cycle with crypto, so yeah,
exactly.
That's sort of where it went. So we talked a bit about the themes that we saw in the market. We talked a bit about the surprises, and it was great to hear about all those things. Let's look back and celebrate some of the winners, the sectors, but specifically the stocks that did very well in 2025. Alex, I'll start with you. Yep. What were the big winning stocks and sectors in 2025?
Well, it's not AI, it's not gold, it's not that, it's satellites. So those are satellite plays. So the EchoStar, the Rocket Labs, the AST Space Mobile. So there's a bunch of things happening. So first, SpaceX is unbelievable, right? With frequent launches, reusable rockets. And then second, EchoStar freed up some spectrums that they sold for about $40 billion. And all these sector has a halo effect on space. SpaceX has a halo effect on the sector, right? So these stocks rally 300, 160 or 130%, right? So this is major. It's quite a surprise as well. I didn't mention it as a surprise, but yeah, for me, that was a major surprise. And then the value chain, the AI value chain, of course. So, I mean, this year was Palantir's year, 147%. The equipment, the Western Digital, Seagate, Sienna, Fix, Comfort System, up 100%. The data centers, and then the healthcare. We didn't talk about this. So healthcare was a big thing with Eli Lilly, over 100% plus on obesity drugs, and Ozempic and so on. Although they had a rougher end of the year, I would say. And along with the crypto and the digital age and the new platforms, you have the Robin Hoods of the market coming up with, stock trading, crypto trading, but now also predictive market, derivative products. So they're on fire with a 200% rally for the year. So yeah, those are big guys.
Big one indeed. I mean, those look up into space. Those were the big winners this year. It was incredible.
Yep.
Dan, what were the big winning stocks and sectors in 2025? What do you think were some of those big winners?
Well, I guess here's where I can go back to what I was talking about with option sellers. So, I mean, option sellers were really some of the big winners this year, both large scale, institutions, as well as the retail traders that Marcus was alluding to earlier. Mm-hmm. Even despite the popularity of these defined outcome funds, where they basically sell a lot of options, which, when you create supply to anything, it puts pressure on the price. So it should be bringing down option prices, which to some degree it has. But I mean, overall, there's still been enough of a risk premium intact to lead to a really strong statistical advantage for option sellers.
For options. And just real quick for the audience, to define what options, because you might have some people who are still learning about options at this point.
Sure. Options are contracts that give you the ability to either buy or sell a stock at a fixed price. And people buy and sell these rights, mm-hmm. and basically trade them. So basically, it's a way to kind of control your risk, whether that's getting more leverage or getting more protection by doing so. And they've been becoming more and more popular as time's been going on.
Yeah, option sellers had a pretty good year for the most part. Marcus, I'll have you close us out here. Close out the show real quick. The big winning stocks and sectors in 2025 as you see it.
Right. So obviously everyone knows, as you already mentioned, AI did what AI did. You have communication services in there. Industrials actually did pretty well as a play off of AI. And then back to the financials. I'm really excited about financials. Down here in Charlotte, North Carolina, we have a lot of banking around here. One stock in particular, Wells Fargo. I look for Wells Fargo from the mid cap to continue growing. They just had their had a ceiling removed. They were in restriction from some issues they had earlier years before. So now their investments are going to be able to increase. In general, the Fed is looking to ease. So this is going to help some of the smaller banks. Regardless of who you think is going to be in the Fed chair, I think we all can agree that the person who's picked is going to probably push rates lower. For better or worse, we'll see how that works out in the end with the lack of data. So I think financials are going to perform well. I like housing actually going into next year. I know it struggled a little bit this year in the individual sectors. REITs actually did okay. And then I like ELAN. This is a ELAN. Mm-hmm. It's like stuff for your pets. So like flea collars, health care for your pets. People who don't the dinks, dual income, no kids, they take care of their pets, right? They spend money on their pets. So that's going to be a sector that and a stock that you can look forward to.
Thank you again to Dan Passarelli, Marcus Sturdivant, and Alex Carteau for sharing your insights on stocks. And thank you to everyone for listening to today's discussion. We'll be back next week for another episode of Early Bird. Have a great day.
One embraced AI and tried to improve their workflows and streamline their businesses, and they were successful. And the other one is still lagging behind. So I think the story is who applied AI, who didn't.
Gold's up like 65% year to date. I mean, the S&P 500's been having a great year too, but that's only up 16%.
Right. So I think this year with alternatives, one thing I noticed is that they changed the dynamic, right?
On this episode of Early Bird, which stocks struggled in 2025? Why did some alternative investments have a good year? And what could happen in the stock market in 2026? Joining us today on the podcast to discuss these topics are Dan Passarelli, president at Market Taker Mentoring, Marcus Sturdivant, founder of the ABC Squared All Bases Covered, and Alex Carteau, CEO of EPSmomentum.com. If you're an investor looking to stay on top of the latest market trends, then you're listening to the right podcast. This is Early Bird, and I'm your host, Stephen Lerner. Before we get to today's discussion, let me tell you how you can save time and beat the market through Early Bird, a free daily email newsletter featuring commentary about the latest trends in stocks, cryptocurrency, and equity crowdfunding. Early Bird is designed to help individual and non-professional investors stay on top of all of the critical investing trends. The newsletter is 100% free and is sent to your email box each weekday morning. Subscribe to Early Bird for free at www.earlybird.email. Once again, that's earlybird.email. And now, today's discussion. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Early Bird podcast. The stock market was great in 2025, but there are still some stocks that did not perform so well. Alternatives were in the spotlight. And as we talk about that, let's also discuss where the stock market could head in 2026. To discuss all these topics, we put together a round table of experts. Dan, I'll start with you. Looking back at 2025, even though there were plenty of winners in the market, and we just talked about it on a previous episode, what are some of the big losing stocks and sectors in 2025 that you saw?
Well, partially because of just the Mag 7 and AI kind of just leading the charge and having the greatest influence on the market. I think that a lot of stocks that were not part of that, I mean, they didn't do so well. They didn't have to do so well for it to show up in the S&P 500 price movement. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, retail is one that kind of struggled somewhat this year. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a big category. There's lots of retailers and some did great. But ones I'm thinking of are like Lululemon,
Yeah.
CMG, and man, PayPal has been sort of a challenging stock to own, which is, I didn't own Lulu, I didn't own CMG, but I have owned PayPal throughout 2025, and why doesn't that darn thing rally? So yeah, that I think those three are the ones that I'm going to throw in there into the mix. That they've just been really, really tough because retail's just sort of been out of favor.
Yeah, especially in a tariff world, it hasn't been good for retail. Certain retail stocks did well in Q4, interestingly enough, but you're right, Lululemon and the rest struggled throughout most of 2025. Alex, so we talked a little bit about some of these stocks and sectors that struggled, but what other losers that you remember back in 2025? I know that we mentioned a few here, but are there others that come to mind when you look back at the year?
Yeah, so following on what Dan just said, on the retail side, like Copart was one. The used car market was on oversupply. They dropped 33% this year. It's pretty major. But the interesting thing is to put this in perspective with Carvana. So Carvana showed up completely this year. Obviously, there's slightly different companies, right? But one embraced AI and tried to improve their workflows and streamline their businesses, and they were successful. And the other one is still lagging behind. So I think the story is who applied AI, who didn't. And my next category to me is the technology softwares. So the softwares, the Teams, the ServiceNows, the Workdays, they kind of lagged a ton, so that's NOW, Team, and WDAY for Workday. So these guys lagged. The reason is that maybe they didn't implement AI enough, or it still doesn't show the efficiencies of that AI implementation. The one that is turning around is CRM, right? So Salesforce, down big this year, but turning around in the last few weeks, and apparently the last call was pretty optimistic. And so that's that to me is there's of course consumer staples. It was still a big inflation year, so everything that's basic consumer staples with very 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 difficult pricing power. High inflation is pretty bad for your business. I mean, those are the big ones, I would say.
Yeah, Salesforce, it turned things around lately. It's embraced AI, to your point, Alex. In fact, that was an interesting point you brought up because Carvana is doing well. They've embraced their AI. CarMax and others have not done so well. They have not embraced AI the same way. So maybe it's not necessarily this sector hasn't performed well. It's if you break it down by those who are leading in transformation and those who are the laggards. Maybe that's one way to look at it. So it's a good way to see how that goes. Marcus, we talked a bit about some of the losing stocks and sectors in 2025. Are there any others you want to add, or what are some of the big losers you saw in the market this year?
Right. Yeah. So even adding on to what to what Alex just said, as far as like some of the service providers, you have to think about like Accenture had a rough year. So some of these providers are just kind of like the intermediary to the agents or training people on the agent struggle. But the really big sector that I remember we spoke about last year, people were like, drill, baby, drill. I was like, economically, it doesn't make sense. Oil was just took a bloodbath, right, last year. Natural gas, for some reason, is higher, right? It's going up for crude oil, like that's down. I think last year we were saying, these oil companies make money around $60 a barrel. It's below $60. It's been hovering around that area. So the oil companies have been down, but actually some of them are doing well. XOM, CVX. So those are more diversified. Some of the larger ones. So even the things we saw last year were that the larger caps perform well until the end of the year, where the small caps made a run. So oil, Oracle struggled a lot towards the end of the year, just with the AI. The market seemed to move with Oracle. They had a good day in recent times with the TikTok information, but it really struggled with the CDSs that really raised questions about people in the financing side of it. And Also, we saw it in the streaming world. That seems to be topsy-turvy right now. Netflix was performing well. Netflix seemed to be a stock that was tariff-proof, right? Like, how are you going to impose tariffs on Netflix or on their content? And now, just here recently, there was a little turmoil inside that stock, and it's just going to be dead money probably for a while until they figure out what they're going to do with the regulatory parts of it with them, Paramount, and Warner Brothers Discovery, which may have another party by the time this is published.
Yeah, I know. That's a continuously changing story. And good points you brought up about some of those stocks, especially some of the oil stocks. Some have done well, like Exxon you brought up, but overall energy hasn't done totally good compared to the rest of the market this past year. So we talked a bit about stocks. We talked about the losers. There are winners across the stock market as well. Let's shift focus a bit and talk a bit about alternative investments. These are non-equities. These can be bonds. These could be commodities like gold or silver. These could be cryptocurrencies. There's alternative platforms out there with equity crowdfunding and real estate. Let's talk a little bit about alternatives. Marcus, I'll have you kick things off. Looking back in 2025, how did some of these alternatives impact the market? Is there anything in the alternatives that come to mind, Marcus, for 2025?
Right. So I think this year with alternatives, one thing that I noticed is that they changed the dynamic, right? They were introduced into the conversation much more. A lot of people weren't even having a conversation about alternatives. They have increased visibility. We've seen a push from the White House to include them inside of private retirement accounts now. We see a lot of people looking for alternatives. They hear all these flash words. It's trendy on social media. People are talking about all these different things that solve alternatives. Some alternatives, you can have different tools or products to protect some of your income. Maybe you have an annuity or an insurance product. People have alternatives they don't even realize inside their total portfolio. But just to go chasing all types of alternatives seems to be it's become more of a trade than investment with alternatives almost. And the private credit side of it is very interesting. You've seen BlackRock and those companies grow. You've seen private credit come in. Some of them stepping back, like Blue Owl with the Oracle deal with one of the data centers. So private credit has become front and center as its alternatives when I'm speaking in that area.
Yeah, it really has become a major force this year, private credit, especially now that it could be part of more portfolios for regular investors out there. So interesting to see how that has emerged. Dan, alternatives. How did alternatives impact the investing world in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's two that I would like to touch on. One that I talked a little bit on the last show is options, which again are contracts that enable the buyers to buy or sell a stock, depending on the type of option, call or put. And a lot of people sell the options short. It's much more common in the options world than it is in the stock world. And when a lot of people are short options, it's kind of a involved story as to exactly why this is, but it can lead, when we get a pretty big volatile move, we can get a much more outsized volatile move. And a lot of what we saw in April with the tariffs, I mean, certainly there was a lot of confusion and misunderstanding and people trying to figure out exactly what it all meant that pushed the market lower. But some of this short options activity contributed to that and just made it bigger than it otherwise would be. And the other thing I'd like to talk about is just gold. Gold's up like 65% year to date. I mean, the S&P 500 has been having a great year too, but that's only up 16%. And, it's just one of the things that people, they talk about it, but just kind of take it in stride. But I mean, that's a pretty big deal. If the S&P 500 was up 65% this year, holy moly. I mean, it'd be some kind of party. But it's just an interesting part of the story that we've seen play out this year.
Yeah, gold broke out in a big way, and any gold-related stock probably did well too because of what happened with the gold price this past year. Alex, let's talk a little bit about alternatives. What are some of alternatives that you thought impacted the market back in 2025?
Yeah, again, so we talked a little bit about private equity and VCs. They used to cover about 20% of the institutional allocation in 2024. Now it's 25. So it's a major increase, right? Just this year. So Marcus touched about it a little bit, but again, I'm going back to this commodity boom, crypto, and this new way of handling assets, handling money, handling real world assets, digitalization of things. I think this is where people would, and that touches everything. It could be a tokenization of a fund, tokenization of real estate, tokenization of gold, tokenization of whatever, right? And that to me is, it's not there yet. I mean, it's the beginning of it. It's the premise of it. But I think this is a major trend that is starting up right now. This year was I would think the year of welcoming crypto to finance. It was embraced by, well, first, many ETFs, so Wall Street and major asset managers. And then second, Washington, right, with the stable coin laws. And that through a real tectonic shift. And we talked about it, the PayPals and the Squares block and these guys who are more in the traditional payment finance, and now they have to adapt, right? So I would say this alternative this year, I would say gold, Bitcoin, crypto are major things that a little bit of a downturn right now, but if you don't have it in your portfolio, then I think you should think twice.
Yeah. 2025 was the year cryptocurrency got a seat at the finance table. Now, it hasn't done well these past few months.
Nicely said.
Yes. And definitely speak to your financial advisor before making any big decisions. I always tell the audience. But these are all good alternatives that everyone has brought up today on the show. So 2025 was a pretty big year in the market. I want to hear, as we wrap things up, your big predictions for 2026 in the stock market. Alex, I'll start with you. What is your big prediction for the stock market in 2026?
All right, so I don't have a crystal ball, but what we do have at EPS Momentum is we have estimates revision. So we have estimates revision from analysts, and going forward 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, right? So we take all those revisions and we see the stocks that have the highest revisions in estimates. Mm-hmm. And these stocks are the NVIDIA, the Micron, the Western Digital, the Teradyne in AI and semiconductor infrastructure. And the energy play, we have Philips, PSX, Valero, VLO, Halliburton, HAL, so energy and refining, that's going to be big next year. Biotech and pharma, still Eli Lilly is in play, and ARGX, Argenx, its sales are accelerating on this name. So those are big names. And then financials, the Charles Schwab's, Robinhood, CBOE, NASDAQ, SPGI, S&P Global. So I think these guys will do well. Rates will hopefully go down as well. More trading, more volatility. We talked about options. Well, CBOE is there to make money next year as well. So like every year. So yeah, these for me are the big. Again, no crystal ball, rely on analyst estimates going forward. These are the big names.
Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning different stocks across different sectors for your prediction. Appreciate it. Marcus, what is your prediction for the stock market in 2026?
Right. Yeah. So like we've mentioned already, we're in the midst of a bull run. So we're coming into like the fourth year of this bull run. So I don't expect 25% growth or 17% growth. I do expect growth next year. I do think we'll be higher, maybe right around the double digits number. I don't know. I expect the Dow Jones to get close to 50,000 next year. Like the Dow Jones has been underrated this year. I don't think people realize how the Dow's move. I know we're talking about stocks that haven't done great. Nike hasn't done great this year. It had its momentum, but it just can't seem to get out of its own way, kind of like UPS did. So those stocks look to recover in the first quarter or maybe the first half of next year. I look for the first half of next year to be a little tumultuous, kind of like this one was. but then it to even out in the second half, because then you're going to have the one big beautiful bill stimulus kicking in. You're going to have the new Fed chair coming in to make moves with that. So I think with some of the turmoil in there, whenever you have a new Fed chair coming in, Murphy's Law, something's going to happen. It's going to test that Fed chair. We'll see how they react to it. And then I also think housing comes back in a big way. So I think people are going to start buying houses again. If the interest rates come down, the pricing and supply can all work out. It sounds like a whole lot of things going on. As far as individual stocks, if you want to play the streaming sector, I kind of like Disney. I think Disney's been in the penalty box long enough. There's time for them maybe to come back and make a move. Costco has also been punished a little bit here lately. So I like Costco from the consumer side. Consumer staples seem to be making a move. We go to a cyclical trade. As far as like if you want to play crypto, I know we were talking about crypto disclosures on that. There actually is a fund, STRD. It's a closed-end fund, but it's a preferred shares of the strategy. Pays like 10% dividend. The strategy just announced not too long ago they set aside like $1 billion to cover these dividends, right? So that's an option because people will probably shift to more dividend stocks and look for those type of things. Another reason why the Dow would be another move. Those are usually dividend stocks and stronger companies. So I just look forward. I also think the international trade will continue to work. I think that's, I think we're in a big trade cycle. Like Dan mentioned with gold. Gold didn't do anything for a long time, and then gold moved, right? And it moved big. So I think we're in a big rotation. I think I said last episode, we have up like 40%, 35% of the Mag 7. That's coming down 20%, maybe 25%. And it's just going to go into other areas.
So, yeah, different properties you looked at, different options. It was interesting. Good picks. That Fed chair appointment will be a big story for next year, and it'll definitely impact the markets. That's for sure. Dan, I'll have you close us out. Your stock market prediction for 2026. What is it?
All right. At the end of 2026, the S&P 500 will close at exactly. No. If somebody knows, tell me. I think more likely than not, we have a good year in the market, beating the average, the 10% average that people talk about. Mainly, for a couple of reasons, just earnings overall. This year they've just been outperforming. And so if that trend continues, that just fundamentally drives prices, as does interest rates coming down, which again, I think we already all have agreed that interest rates are likely to come down pretty significantly next year with the new Fed chair. Caveat there is that, there's a lot of political stuff going on in the world. And if we end up having some, military type conflicts, that could maybe put a damper on things. But, being a trader, you have to think about these things that can go wrong, the black swans. Also, I think I see the big companies starting in AI, starting to supplant the smaller ones. Some of these smaller companies that are just getting more and more laden with debt as they try and grow their AI business. I just think companies like Google and such are going to eat their lunch.
They already are, to a degree. It's a good point you brought up there, but yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I can throw one more in there too. Sure. I think somebody mentioned that on the last show. I think it might have been Alex. Prediction markets, or maybe it was Marcus, I forget who it was. But prediction markets, I think, are really going to become a very big thing. They kind of already are, but there's tons of room for them to grow. And some of the companies that are strange bedmates, like Robinhood and CBOE and CME, are very, very likely to be winners in that and benefit from it, as they don't just dip their toe in the water, but I think they're jumping in for a swim.
Thank you again to Dan Passarelli, Marcus Sturdivant, and Alex Carteau for sharing your insights on stocks. And thank you to everyone for listening to today's discussion. We'll be back next week for another episode of Early Bird. Have a great day.
we have a new administration coming into office, and the policies are going to be radically different than the prior administration. And even, this is Trump's second term. It'll be even different than his first term.
Remember, because I think the market's going to get choppy. So just remember your investment strategy, why you're invested the way you are, stick to it. Timing the market is much better than timing the market.
On this episode of Early Bird, what will be the top investing themes in the stock market in 2025? Plus, what stocks should you buy this year and which stocks should you avoid? Joining us today on the podcast are Jason DiLorenzo, founder of Volan, and Marcus Sturdivant, an advisor. If you're an investor looking to stay on top of the latest market trends, then you're listening to the right podcast. This is Early Bird, and I'm your host, Stephen Lerner. Before we get to today's discussion, let me tell you how you can save time and beat the market through Early Bird, a free daily email newsletter featuring commentary about the latest trends in stocks, cryptocurrency, and equity crowdfunding. Early Bird is designed to help individual and non-professional investors stay on top of all of the critical investing trends. The newsletter is 100% free and is sent to your email box each weekday morning. Subscribe to Early Bird for free at www.earlybird.email. Once again, that's earlybird.email. And now, today's discussion. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Early Bird podcast. It's Stephen Lerner. We are focusing today's discussion on the most important investing themes as we enter the market here in 2025. Joining us today on the program are Jason DiLorenzo, founder of Volan, and Marcus Sturdivant, who's an advisor. Thank you both for coming on the podcast today to discuss this critical topic. Thank you both.
Stephen, pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it so much for having us on. Happy 2025, everyone.
Yeah, so to get this started, I kind of want to just keep it real simple. If you could, and I know we're looking at this at the very beginning of the year in 2025. Who knows what will happen in the year? A lot of us were just making predictions right now. But if you could, I don't know, assign one word, just one word that describes how you think the market will turn out in 2025, what do you think that one word would be? Marcus, if you can go first, just real quick, that one word that you think might best describe the market that we're about to enter in 2025.
Meticulous.
Meticulous, okay. And Jason, that one word that you might say to describe the market as we enter the new year in 2025.
I'll say volatile. I think there's going to be some wild swings in 2025.
Volatile. Two very different words here, two different very meanings. So let's kind of unpack what's going on here. Jason, we'll start with you. With volatility in mind, what do you think will be the most important investing themes in the stock market in 2025?
So I think there will be two main themes. Primarily, to start, we have a new administration coming into office, and the policies are going to be radically different than the prior administration. And even, this is Trump's second term. It'll be even different than his first term. He's a lot more experienced, and he has more goals in mind. He's had a long time to think about how he would change America. The three policies that he's been clear on is the first, the deportation of illegal immigrants. The second would be his policy about punitive tariffs. And the third would be shrinking government. And starting with illegal immigrants, if he deports all of them, we had a large influx of illegal immigrants in the Biden administration. If they become deported, that will reduce demand domestically and also create labor increases, or labor wage increases. Because of that, that'll cause kind of a stagflation issue. I'm not saying that we shouldn't deport all the illegal immigrants, and I'm not talking from a virtue standpoint, from a moral standpoint. I'm just talking from an economic standpoint. There is going to be a lot less demand, and low-skilled labor is going to have a lower supply. So and demand is not going to decrease for that. So I think that some labor costs from for low wage employees is going to increase. As far as punitive tariffs go, America is primarily an importing country. And while America is strong economically, according to our GDP calculations, tariffs will raise prices because on many goods that are imported. China, Mexico, Europe are the primary targets, it seems, for Trump tariffs. And it seems like he's going to implement those quickly in his administration. That will also increase prices and increase inflation as well. And then shrinking government. Shrinking the size of the government is probably something that is needed to be done. However, it will also shrink the economy. The government's paying out less, so the economy will also shrink. And that will, overall, all three of those policies will create a shrinking economy, but expanding inflation. And that is the definition of stagflation. So I think that is going to be probably the biggest key theme. But then in the latter half of 2025, I think that public and private debt are going to come into focus. First, credit card delinquencies are increasing higher than in pre-pandemic levels. Right now, they are at 3.23%, and it hasn't been this high since the global financial crisis. Consumer loans, delinquent consumer loans are at 2.74%, also not this high since the global financial crisis recovery. On the public side, currently 23% of all payments by the U.S. government are made to pay interest on the debt. Right now, Treasury demand is strong enough to handle the debt, but soon the supply of domestic treasuries are going to skyrocket unless the government is shrunk enough to handle these costs, which it really can't be. So I think the breaking point will be when bank reserves can no longer have the liquidity to handle the increased supply of treasuries. So we have to watch Treasury auctions for when that will be.
Wow. So you brought up a lot of good points about what could be on tap in 2025, starting with the new administration. Marcus, before we get into some of the themes you might see in 2025, do you want to respond to anything, Jason may have just said, anything about the new administration that seems to be a big, prevalent potential theme in 2025?
Yeah, Jason made some great points. I would like to point out, as far as what the administration goes, people are generally pointing to the fact and referring to it as how it came into 2016. And as Jason mentioned, this is a totally different administration. President-elect Trump is much more prepared this time. He's getting his cabinet in order, everything's set up either way it goes, for it to be prepared for him to start initiating some of his moves day one. I think to compare the actual administrations, it would be better to look at 2018 as an entering point. That's where more of these tariffs were started to be implemented. That's when the Congress was more shifted like it is now. So just looking at 2018 as more of a reflection point as to what's to come. But obviously we don't have the same geopolitical forces that we have in. So I think Jason made a great point on that. With the with the immigration, yeah, that's going to be inflationary at first, maybe the whole time, because as he mentions, these lower earning jobs are going to be deported and people are going to have to take those jobs. People probably won't take those jobs at the same wage. So,
yeah, the good points you brought up about the administration. Obviously, the new administration is going to be a big story for 2025. It's going to impact the markets, but beyond the new administration, what are some of the other big themes that investors should keep an eye on in 2025?
Gotcha. So obviously you have artificial intelligence and all the money that's going into there. I mean, that could be something I think that may could be seismic shift to the market if some of these AI companies were just to miss some of their earnings potential. That could be bad. Geopolitical tensions, as Jason mentioned, and then the Federal Reserve, just what they're going to do, how are they going to handle these interest rates? Are they going to be data dependent? Are they behind right now? Are they playing catch up? And what is the effect of a Santa Claus rally that didn't happen? We're coming off of 25 and 23% returns in the S&P. So people should probably temper their expectations as far as that goes. If you're out here expecting to get 25% again, I'm telling folks that I work with, just temper your expectations as far as that goes. So just tying back to being meticulous, you want to be careful, show great attention to detail in what you're picking as far as what you're investing in. And yeah, remember, because I think the market's going to get choppy. So just remember your investment strategy, why you're invested the way you are, stick to it. Timing the market is much better than timing the market.
Great points. Great points there, Marcus. Jason, real quick, it sounds like, we may have to lower expectations for the year. There was not a Santa Claus rally heading into the new year. Do you agree that we might want to lower those expectations going into 2025 a bit?
Well, lowering expectations from 30% shouldn't be too tough. It's not a normal year as far as returns go.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. However, I also think that we should lower expectations even to beat even like rates, because, like Marcus was talking about, I kind of wanted to focus on what he said about the FOMC. By design, monetary policy and fiscal policies are separated. The FOMC, led by Jerome Powell currently, is the head of monetary policy. So that's raising and lowering interest rates, buying and selling bonds and growing or shrinking their balance sheet. Those are monetary considerations. Donald Trump, or Congress technically, but Washington, D.C. is in charge of fiscal policy. That is collecting taxes, paying them out, deciding how to spend their taxes. Is it going to go to handouts? Is it going to go to government services, defense, etc.? So Jerome Powell and Donald Trump have had a contentious relationship, even though Donald Trump had said he doesn't plan on trying to push Jerome Powell out, and Jerome Powell has publicly stated that he will not be pushed out. So there's already a contentious relationship, at least for the next 2 years. And I think that monetary policy is going to have to constantly play catch up to the fiscal policy that is out there. As far as AI, that was another good point by Marcus. Will they monetize eventually? And I think that the sentiment around AI could sour in 2025, like Marcus kind of alluded to, mainly because whenever there's these new technologies, from the internet in 2000, cryptocurrency had a massive dip before it rose, and Bitcoin came back to 100,000. A lot of times these, even cloud computing, a lot of times these new technologies have an initial surge as people's imaginations run ahead of the technology. Then it comes down as reality hits, and then another slow climb to monetization. So I think that we've had that initial rally now in AI, with NVIDIA going up 100%, and other, TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor, also going up quite a bit. I think that there may be a pullback in these stocks.
So, we just described some of the big investing themes for 2025. We described what people should watch out for in the market. With that in mind, I want to take a look at some of the sectors and stocks that investors may want to buy in this environment in 2025. Marcus, I'll start with you. Are there any particular sectors or stocks that you really want to buy in 2025?
Yeah, so as far as sectors, I'm actually looking into cybersecurity a little bit more here lately, just with the threats of ransomware, spam attacks, these types of things. I think one happened just the other day, earlier this week. Individual names are kind of like CrowdStrike, I've invested in, Palantir. Even though Palantir was the highest earning stock in the S&P last year, I don't expect Palantir to be the highest earning stock again this year, but Palantir has shown that it's pretty durable. It's been through both administrations. They have government defense contracts, so they're pretty strong on that front. As far as, like I said, the cybersecurity sector, Palo Alto will be a good name, CrowdStrike will be a good name, but if you just want to maybe follow themes, $1 trillion went into ETFs last year. A good ETF for cybersecurity would be the CIBR. You want to look into that one. Inside there are smaller cybersecurity companies that may be bought up inside of cybersecurity because you can't really pick all the winners and losers out of that. But it has your exposure exposure to Palo Alto. As far as another stock that I'm actually bullish on, I like Uber a lot going into this year. Uber took a big hit at the end of the year, really based on nothing fundamental. As far as why it would take a hit, it was more of just the opposite of the Trump trade. It was like as Tesla went up, Uber went down, and those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. So I think Uber is working and building a super app where they will eventually link with Waymo. Tesla will probably be involved in there. Like right now, their problem is capacity. They can't meet the capacity with Uber. So they're showing earnings growth. So I like those two stocks.
Yeah, good point. Uber was way down later in 2024, and hopefully there could be a recovery coming in 2025, but we'll see. Jason, are there any particular stocks or sectors that you like the most as we're heading into 2025?
So first I wanted to talk about cybersecurity. That was a great point by Marcus. One of my favorite stocks in the cybersecurity section is Sentinel-1. That's just S is the ticker symbol. That is, for like when you're looking at financials, that is a very solid, in my opinion, stock to have. As far as sectors to invest in at this time, because of the strong projected strong inflation, stagflation in the market, I would want to be in some property REITs, not mortgage REITs, property REITs and commodity stocks, commodities that are either useful or even metals. U.S. Steel, which is struggling right now after the failed acquisition by Nippon, that might be a solid buying opportunity just because of the assets that they hold. I also prefer holders of physical gold as opposed to gold futures. Ticker CEF is the Sprott Physical Gold Fund, and it's a better metals investment than gold funds based on futures like GLD, or even though those are more popular. In the second half of 2025, I would also invest in defensive stocks, established biotechs, Merck and all those large cap pharmas, and also consumer staples in the second half of 2025. Also, for better or for worse, in the pharmaceutical area, the middlemen for pharmacies is mostly dominated by CVS Caremark. There have been some legislation to try to eliminate that middleman area, but it seems like Trump is on the side of them. So I would be careful betting against them. So CVS, you might get a strong move, and on the other side of that, Walgreens may get weak.
I see. Well, good. You're picking lots of different sectors. These are not the most talked about sometimes, but these are cyclical names that could rebound in a big way in 2025. So now that we discuss some sectors and stocks that could do well and that you want to maybe get a piece of, speak to your financial advisor for our listeners out there who may be interested in that. Let's talk about some of the sectors and stocks we may want to avoid this year. Jason, I'll start with you. What sectors, what stocks are you trying to stay away from in 2025?
So first, I think financial deregulation will give the financial sector an initial boost. Banking stocks, etc. Also, clarified crypto regulations may help in that area as well. However, once this boost happens, I would avoid financials and avoid chasing it, because the overall downside movement in bond value that we've already seen and probably will continue will only get worse in 2025. This will render many regional banks insolvent. And that has to, if they do go insolvent, the FDIC has to pay out all the holders in the bank, and that they're picking the pockets of the larger banks. Also combine that with the private debt difficulties and the public debt difficulties for the globally systematic important banks, GSIBs. It's a recipe for financial stock implosion, even if they initially get a bump from Donald Trump deregulation. I also think that many speculative stocks will suffer as liquidity will become tight. Startups and small caps that are not related to commodities. So like oil stocks are not included in this necessarily. but like small to mid-sized biotech stocks, small technology firms, anybody who relies on debt in order to stay solvent will suffer, because I believe venture capital will get a lot tighter in 2025.
Yeah, the landscape is going to change in some of those sectors, whether it's smaller tech, whether it's some of the financials that you mentioned as well, Jason. They could take a bit of a hit in this new year. All right, Marcus. So to close us out, what are some sectors or stocks that you think investors should stay away from in this environment in 2025?
Yeah, so I think Jason made a really good point about financials, how you will get that initial bump, and then at the end of the year you could see a decline, especially with the fluctuation in interest rates. What happens if the Fed raises rates at some point this year, which is possible? That could be a real big shock to the market in general. This American exceptionalism trade that's going on, you need to continue it. It's going to continue. I think international's not really a sector I'm looking at. I'd like to keep it domestically. As far as more specific, I think energy is another sector to avoid, just because I know we're going to this place where we're going to drill, open up all of the oil refineries, but we're already providing a lot of oil, already providing a lot of natural gas to other parts of the world. I think we're at some of the highest capacities we've ever been at. Once we open up more of these lines, the price of oil is going to go down, right? Historically, Republicans tend to do worse with energy in general, and Democrats tend to do better in energy over the history of the stock market, which most people may not believe or realize, but that's kind of how it works. Supply versus demand, as I said. So, and then just to circle back on the international, all the things going on internationally right now with Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, North Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, and China. I don't see all of those things getting smoothed out anytime soon. Seems to be constant. So, yeah, domestic as opposed to international, and I would like to stay away from energy. It's not to say there aren't good energy stocks, but just in general. And that's not to say there aren't good international stocks as well. If you're going to invest in international, I prefer to pick the actual stock, not a sector.
Thank you again to Jason DiLorenzo and Marcus Sturdivant for sharing your insights on the stock market. And thank you to everyone for listening to today's discussion. We'll be back next week for another episode of Early Bird. Have a great day.